He walked away from his wedding, then she whispered this one word. He walked away from his own wedding, in front of hundreds of stunned guests. His bride collapsed to her knees, his mother screamed his name, and the whispers began spreading through the crowd like wildfire. But then, she whispered something that froze him in his tracks. What she said changed everything. The church bells were still ringing when Daniel threw open the grand wooden doors and stormed out into the sunlight. The cameras that had been flashing with joy a moment ago now turned into weapons, capturing his betrayal, immortalizing his shame. Gasps erupted behind him. "Daniel!" His father's voice cracked like thunder. "Where are you going?" His best man shouted, sprinting after him. But Daniel didn't stop. His footsteps echoed down the marble steps as the world blurred around him. This wasn't cold feet, no. This was something darker, something buried inside him for years. His bride, Claire, still in her white lace gown, stumbled forward, her veil slipping down her face. She looked like a ghost, staring at the man who had just shattered her soul in front of everyone she loved. Guests murmured. Phones came out. The priest stood frozen at the altar. It was no longer a wedding. It was a scandal unfolding in real time. Daniel's chest heaved as he reached the black car waiting at the curb. His hand gripped the handle. Freedom was just one pull away. But then, a voice pierced through the chaos. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a cry. It was a whisper. So faint, so fragile, yet it cut through the noise like a knife. "Daniel," Claire whispered. "I know your secret." His hand froze on the door handle. The air around him seemed to collapse. The chatter of the crowd dimmed into silence. Slowly, he turned. Claire stood there, her veil now fully covering her face, her hands trembling as she clutched the hem of her dress. Her lips quivered, but her eyes burned with something more than heartbreak. She knew. And in that instant, Daniel realized that this wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was an execution. He dropped his hand from the car. His face paled. What did you say?" he muttered, his voice hoarse. Claire stepped closer, her whisper now venomous but calm. "If you leave, I will tell them all." Daniel's freedom was only a step away. But Claire's whisper chained him to the ground. What secret could be so powerful that it turned the groom's escape into a trap? Daniel's throat tightened as the crowd pressed closer, their whispers clawing at his ears. A moment ago, he had been a runaway groom. Now, he was a man cornered. Claire's eyes locked on him, steady and unblinking. The kind of stare that wasn't born of heartbreak, but of knowledge. Daniel's best man, Michael, broke the silence first. "Claire, what are you talking about?" he demanded, stepping between them. But Claire didn't answer him. She only tilted her head, her gaze never leaving Daniel's. Daniel's pulse pounded. His palms grew slick with sweat. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not today. Not when he had spent years burying the truth. He forced a smile, hoping to defuse the moment. "Claire, you're upset. You don't know what you're saying." Her voice cracked the air like glass. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm saying." The crowd gasped again. The priest shifted uncomfortably. Guests whispered to each other, phones raised higher now, hungry for scandal. Daniel glanced at the car again. Freedom was still there, waiting. But if he left, she would tell them all. His mind flashed back to nights he swore he'd never think about it again. The blood, the lies, the choice he made when no one was watching. He had promised himself it was buried forever. But somehow, Claire had found out. "Don't," Daniel whispered under his breath, his voice trembling. "Not here." Claire stepped closer. The veil slipped, revealing her tear-streaked face, but behind the tears was steel. "If you walk away, Daniel, I'll tell them what you did on Riverbend Road." Riverbend Road. The name hit him like a bullet. Daniel staggered back, clutching his chest as if the word itself had shot through him. Michael's face turned pale. "Riverbend. Daniel, what is she talking about?" Daniel couldn't answer. The images were flooding back too fast. The car headlights, the scream, the silence after, and the body. Daniel's vision blurred as Claire's words echoed in his skull. Riverbend Road. The guests shifted uneasily. Some looked confused, others curious. Michael kept pressing. Daniel, what happened there? What is she talking about? But Daniel wasn't listening anymore. His mind was slipping backwards, clawing into the night he had tried to erase. It was raining. Hard. The storm had swallowed Riverbend Road, turning the narrow stretch of asphalt into a river of slick black glass. Daniel's car, brand new, engine growling, cut through the darkness like a bullet. He shouldn't have been driving that fast. He knew it. But he was angry, reckless, drunk on pride and whiskey. Every turn of the wheel was a gamble. Then, headlights. Too close. Too fast. The blinding beam pierced through the rain. A car veered across the yellow line, honking desperately. Daniel panicked. He jerked the wheel. Tires screamed. Metal collided. The world spun. When the car finally stopped, steam rose from the crumpled hood. Daniel's breath came in sharp, ragged gasps. He stumbled out into the storm, his shoes splashing in puddles. There, in the rain, lay the other driver. A young man, no older than 25. His body twisted unnaturally, his face pale under the flashing lightning. Daniel's heart dropped. He wanted to scream for help, to call someone. But then, he saw the flask on his passenger seat, the smell of whiskey on his breath. The truth was undeniable. If he stayed, if he called it in, his life was over. Prison. Headlines. Ruin. So Daniel made the choice. The choice that would haunt him forever. He walked away. He left the man on Riverbend Road. Left him to die alone in the rain. Daniel snapped back to the present. His chest heaved as if he were still standing in that storm. His eyes darted across the wedding crowd, faces blurred, voices distorted. Claire stepped closer, her whisper now sharp enough for others to hear. You left him to die, Daniel. And you thought no one would ever know. The guests gasped. Murmurs grew louder, panic spreading like fire. Michael grabbed Daniel by the arm. Tell me she's lying. Daniel, tell me she's lying. But Daniel couldn't speak. His lips parted, but no words came out. His silence was louder than any confession. And then, through the chaos, another voice rose from the back of the church. A voice no one expected. I know what happened on Riverbend Road too. The church went still. Every head turned toward the back pews. A figure stepped forward slowly, his footsteps echoing against the marble floor. He wasn't dressed like a guest. No suit. No tie. Just a plain black jacket, soaked from the rain outside. The whispers turned into a wave. Who is that? Did Claire invite him? Why is he here? Daniel's knees nearly buckled. His mouth went dry. He knew that face. He had prayed he'd never see it again. It was Ethan, the brother of the man who died on Riverbend Road. Ethan's eyes burned with years of rage and grief. His hands trembled as he pointed directly at Daniel. You thought you could bury my brother along with the truth, Ethan said, his voice loud, shaking the rafters of the church. But I've waited for this day. And I'm not leaving until they all know what you did. Gasps rippled through the guests. Claire's lips trembled, but she stood firm. She hadn't known Ethan would come, but his arrival was a dagger in Daniel's chest. Michael grabbed Daniel's shoulder. This is insane. Tell me he's lying, Daniel. But Daniel couldn't. His silence was the loudest scream of all. Ethan took another step forward, his voice rising. My brother's blood is on your hands. While we buried him, you climbed ladders, wore suits, built your empire like nothing ever happened. But I swore, Daniel. I swore I'd make you pay. The priest raised his trembling hands. This is a sacred place. Please, not here. But Ethan cut him off, his face twisted with rage. There's no sanctuary for murderers. The room erupted into chaos. Guests shouted, some tried to leave, others pulled out phones to capture every second. The wedding had become a public courtroom, with Daniel standing as the condemned. Claire's voice finally broke through, softer but sharper than a blade. Daniel, if you loved me, even once, then don't make me say it. Tell them the truth yourself. Daniel's breath came in short, broken gasps. His world was collapsing, his bride against him, his best man doubting him, and the brother of the dead standing in judgment. And then, from the corner of the church, someone else stood up. A woman, an older woman, her face pale, her eyes brimming with both fear and fury. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "Stop this! Stop this now! Because Daniel isn't the only one guilty of what happened that night." The room froze. All eyes turned toward her. The woman's voice trembled, but her presence silenced the chaos. She wasn't a stranger. She was someone Daniel knew well, someone he had trusted. It was Mrs. Alden, his mother. Daniel's world tilted. His mother had been sitting quietly in the front row, pale with worry. But now she stood tall, her hands shaking, her eyes glistening with guilt. "Enough," she whispered, though her words cut sharper than a scream. "Enough of this spectacle. You want the truth? Fine. But you should know. Daniel wasn't alone that night." The crowd gasped. Ethan's face contorted with rage. "What are you saying?" Mrs. Alden's voice cracked, but she pressed forward. "He called me. After the crash. I was the first one he called." Daniel staggered back. His chest tightened as memories flooded in, memories he had locked away. The phone rang. His mother's voice. Her trembling hands as she drove out to Riverbend Road that night. She had been there. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God!" The guests' whispers grew louder, sharper, turning the wedding hall into a hive of judgment. Ethan's fists clenched. "So you knew? You knew my brother was out there, dying in the rain, and you did nothing?" Tears streaked down Mrs. Alden's face. "I begged him to call for help. I begged him. But Daniel was terrified, broken, and I made the choice to protect my son." Her voice cracked under the weight of her confession. "I told him we had to leave. I told him no one could ever know." The words hit like thunder. Daniel's eyes burned as he whispered, "Mother," but his voice held no comfort, only betrayal. The church descended into chaos again. Some guests shouted in disbelief, others cried out in anger. Phones captured every moment, every trembling confession. Ethan shook his head, his voice raw with grief. "So both of you left him to die. My brother's life meant nothing to you." Mrs. Alden fell to her knees, sobbing. "It was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but everything I did was to protect my child." Daniel stood frozen. He had carried the weight of that night for years, but now, he realized he had never carried it alone. His mother had been a part of it. She had shaped his silence, his shame. But then Claire stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "No, Daniel. She didn't just shape your silence. She controlled it. She's been controlling you your whole life. And this secret is just the beginning." The guests stared at Claire in stunned silence. Her white gown shimmered under the chandeliers, but her eyes were colder than ice. Daniel's lips trembled as he whispered, What are you saying?" Claire took a slow step forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her veil sliding back to reveal her face fully, no longer the blushing bride, but the executioner. "I never loved you, Daniel," she said, her voice cutting through the crowd like a blade. "Do you want to know why I said yes when you asked me to marry you? Because I wanted you here. Trapped. Surrounded. With nowhere left to run." The room erupted with gasps. Michael blinked, stunned. "Claire, what the hell are you talking about?" Claire's voice grew steadier, sharper, every syllable a dagger. "My cousin was the man you left on Riverbend Road." Daniel's knees buckled. His stomach lurched. The floor beneath him felt like it was collapsing. Claire's eyes glistened, but there was no softness in them, only vengeance. "He was family. My blood. And while my family buried him, you moved on. You smiled in photographs. You wore expensive suits. You built your empire on lies. Do you know how it felt, Daniel? To watch you live like nothing ever happened? Daniel staggered back, shaking his head. No, you can't. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low, venomous. She's telling the truth. We've been waiting for this day. The crowd whispered furiously, phones raised higher. The story was no longer a scandal. It was a public unmasking. Claire's voice trembled as she continued. For years I planned this moment. I played the part. The sweet fiancée. The loyal bride. But today, I'm not your wife, Daniel. I'm your judge. Daniel's face was drained of color. His chest rose and felt like a man drowning on dry land. His eyes darted to his mother, but Mrs. Alden was slumped in the front row, weeping, powerless. Michael looked between them all, his voice shaking. Claire, you can't just do this here. But Claire cut him off, her voice breaking. Yes. Here. In front of everyone. Because Daniel doesn't deserve to hide in the shadows anymore. He doesn't deserve silence. He deserves the truth. Her hand reached into her gown, pulling something out. Not a weapon, not a note, but a folded photograph. She held it up for everyone to see. The image was blurred by rain, but unmistakable. The wreckage on Riverbend Road. The broken body. Proof. Daniel staggered back, his voice hoarse. How did you get that? Claire's whisper was final, merciless. From the only witness you never knew existed. The photograph fluttered in Claire's hand as the crowd leaned forward, gasping, whispering, recording every second. The church didn't feel like a wedding hall anymore. It felt like a courtroom. Daniel's voice broke. No, there couldn't have been anyone else. No one was there. Claire's eyes didn't leave him. You thought the rain washed away the truth. But someone saw you. Someone who remembers. The back doors of the church creaked open. A figure stepped through. The room fell silent. A man, weathered by time, with lines carved deep into his face. His clothes were plain, his walk slow but purposeful. His eyes locked on Daniel with the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. Ethan froze. Mr. Harland. The name rippled through the crowd like an electric shock. Mr. Harland. The old groundskeeper who had lived near Riverbend Road for decades. Daniel's body went cold. He remembered him now, the flicker of a lantern in the distance that night, a shadow moving in the rain. He had told himself it was his imagination, but it hadn't been. Mr. Harland's voice was gravelly, heavy with years of silence. I saw everything. The crash. The boy on the ground. And Daniel. I saw you walk away. The crowd erupted. Screams, gasps, shouts. Phones captured every word, every expression. Daniel shook his head violently. No! You should have said something back then. Why stay silent all these years? The old man's eyes hardened. Because your mother came to me. All eyes shot to Mrs. Alden. Her face crumbled, her sobs breaking through the heavy silence. Mr. Harland continued, his voice low and bitter. She begged me to stay quiet. She offered me money. Said it was a mistake, that it would destroy you. I wanted to go to the police, but I was a coward. I took the money, and I let my silence bury your crime. Gasps tore through the crowd again. Some guests cried out in horror. Others cursed under their breath. Claire's voice shook with fury. So this wasn't just a mistake. It was a cover-up. Bought. Hidden. Protected. Daniel staggered forward, his face pale, his voice cracking. Stop, please, this isn't how it looks. I didn't mean any of this. But Mr. Harland's words were final. You left him to die, Daniel. And your mother made sure the world would never know. The crowd turned, dozens of eyes burning into Daniel and his mother. The weight of judgment hung heavy. But then, another sound cut through the chaos. The sharp, deliberate click of a phone camera. Someone wasn't just recording. They were streaming it. Live. The sharp click echoed like a gunshot. Then silence. Every eye turned toward the back pews. A young man stood there, phone raised high, streaming live to an audience that was growing by the second. The screen glowed with comments flying across. "Is this real? He's guilty! Someone call the police!" Daniel's stomach dropped. His blood ran cold. This wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was evidence, broadcast to the world in real time. Michael rushed toward the man, shouting, "Stop recording! Put that down!" But the streamer only backed away, keeping the camera locked on Daniel. "Everyone deserves to see this. No more hiding." Claire's eyes flashed. "Good. Let them watch." The crowd erupted, some cheering for justice, others panicking at the thought of being caught on camera. The church was no longer a wedding, it was a live stage. Daniel's breathing grew frantic. He clutched at his suit collar as if it were strangling him. His gaze darted between the camera, his bride, his mother, and Ethan. Every path he saw ended in ruin. He whispered, almost to himself, "They'll destroy me." Claire stepped forward, her voice merciless. "No, Daniel. You destroyed yourself the night you walked away on Riverbend Road. This," she gestured at the phones, "is just the truth finally catching up." The streamer's voice boomed, narrating like a commentator. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching this live. A wedding turned into a confession. A groom accused of leaving a man to die. Stay tuned, because it's not over yet." The comment feed exploded, hearts and shocked emojis flooding the screen. Hashtags began appearing, names and accusations spreading like wildfire. Ethan stepped closer, his fists trembling. "The world knows now, Daniel. You can't run from this." Daniel's chest tightened. His legs shook. His empire, his reputation, everything he had built, burning in seconds. But then, Mrs. Alden, still trembling, raised her voice. "No! Stop this! You don't understand!" Everyone froze. Her words cracked like thunder in the chaos. "You think Daniel is the monster. But the truth is bigger than you. Bigger than me. There's someone else. Someone who made sure this secret stayed buried. Someone far more dangerous than any of us." The church fell silent again. Claire's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Alden's voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible over the storm outside. "Riverbend Road wasn't just an accident. It was a message. And if you dig too deep, you'll end up just like him. They thought it was just Daniel's sin. A mistake on a lonely road. But when his mother spoke, every heart froze. Because this wasn't just about a groom running from guilt. It was about a secret powerful enough to destroy them all." The storm outside roared, lightning slicing across the stained glass windows like jagged knives. Daniel turned to his mother, voice cracking. "What are you talking about? Who made sure it stayed buried?" Mrs. Alden's hands shook as she clutched her pearls. "You were never supposed to know. None of you. I kept quiet because the man who protected us, he's not the type you defy." The crowd murmured, their voices a sea of suspicion. Phones stayed raised, recording every word. Claire's eyes locked onto Mrs. Alden. "Tell us. Who?" Before she could answer, the church doors slammed open. A gust of wind carried in rain, and a figure. He walked with slow, deliberate steps, flanked by two men in dark coats. His presence alone silenced the chaos. His sharp features, his calculating eyes, the faint smirk tugging at his lips, he didn't need an introduction. The guests whispered, terrified. "That's him. The man who owns half the city. The one with judges in his pocket." The businessman? Daniel's knees nearly gave way. "You." The man's voice was calm, smooth, like a serpent in silk. Daniel, you were doing so well. But then you had to let guilt choke you on your happiest day." He turned toward the cameras and smiled as if the live stream was his stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching a tragedy unfold. But don't get too excited. Because of this story? It isn't yours to tell. It's mine," Michael shouted, stepping forward. "Stay away from him. You've ruined enough lives. The businessman didn't even flinch. His men moved, blocking Michael with silent precision. Then, he leaned closer to Daniel, his voice a whisper that still carried across the hushed church. Riverbend Road wasn't an accident. It was an order. And you, he tapped Daniel's chest, were just the bait. Gasps filled the air. Ethan's fist clenched. Claire's face turned pale. The businessman straightened his jacket. You all think this is about Daniel's choices. About guilt, or love, or betrayal. But this is about control. And as long as I'm standing, the truth will never be yours. The streamer's camera wavered, struggling to stay steady. Comments exploded across the feed. Who is this guy? He's admitting it's live. Someone call the FBI. The businessman turned toward the lens, his sly smile widening. Turn it off. Now, or you won't live long enough to upload it. The streamer froze. The crowd recoiled. And Daniel, his heart hammering, finally understood. He wasn't just running from a mistake. He was running from a man powerful enough to turn life into a prison. The church had become a battlefield of silence and shadows. The storm rattled the stained glass, thunder groaning like a warning from above. Daniel stood between his bride, his brother, his mother, and the man who had haunted his life in secret, the businessman. Cameras still streamed, the world watching breathless. The businessman smirked, brushing invisible dust from his suit. You see, Daniel, this was never about love or family. It was about obedience. You were my investment. And Riverbend Road was just the down payment. Claire's jaw tightened. Ethan bristled. Michael tried to push forward but was blocked again. Daniel's eyes burned with something different now. Not fear, not guilt, but resolve. He stepped forward, voice steady. No. Tonight this ends. You don't own me anymore. The businessman chuckled. Oh, Daniel, don't be dramatic. Without me, you're nothing. With me, you're untouchable. The streamer's camera zoomed closer, catching every drop of sweat, every tremor of truth. Comments flooded. Expose him. Daniel, say it. This is bigger than a wedding. It's history. Daniel drew a shaky breath, then turned, not to the businessman, not to his bride, but to the camera itself. To everyone watching, you deserve the truth. Riverbend Road wasn't an accident. It was a setup. He pointed at the businessman. Ordered it. And my silence made me his prisoner. But no more. If I have to burn my life to the ground to free it, then let it burn. The church erupted in chaos. Guests screamed. Phones lit like fireflies. The businessman's smirk finally cracked, rage flashing in his calculating eyes. You fool! Do you think the world will protect you? Daniel stood taller, his voice breaking but loud enough to echo. No. But at least the world will know. And once the truth is out, they'll never stop digging. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his face like a final confession carved in fire. The businessman lunged forward, his men followed, but the crowd surged between them. Phones raised high, recording from every angle. The live stream feed doubled, tripled, spreading like wildfire across platforms. Ethan shouted, "It's over! He's done!" The businessman roared. This isn't over. This is only the beginning. And as police sirens wailed faintly in the distance, Daniel closed his eyes. He had lost his wedding, his secrets, maybe even his future. But for the first time in years, he wasn't running. He whispered to himself, barely audible, but caught by the stream. Better to be hated for the truth than loved for a lie. The screen faded to black. The live stream had exposed everything. Daniel had confessed. The businessman had been unmasked. But with power that deep, with enemies that dangerous, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a larger war. If you've stayed with me until now, you know every secret has a price. This was the final confession. But the shadows still hide darker truths, and I'll be here to tell them. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay tuned. because the next story will shake you even harder.